I did my undergraduate studies from St. Stephen's College in the field of economics. I then went on to do my master's in economics from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. After my master's, I actually did a brief stint in the corporate world. I worked with McKinsey in their marketing analytics division for a year. However, I realized that I am probably I enjoy doing I like being my boss in some way, and to have the freedom to ideate and think, and I would like more freedom to do that. And that's when I decided to pursue a PhD. I then enrolled for my PhD at the Indian Statistical Institute, and I finished my PhD in 2015 in the field of quantitative economics. So largely, my work has been in the field of labor and development economics with a focus on gender, largely so far, where I've looked at issues around women's unequal pay, their falling employment in the rural areas over time, the factors which have contributed to this decline, both the supply and the demand side factors, in fact. On the urban employment aspect, I've looked at I've looked at the reasons behind women's stagnation. So if you see, over the last 40 years, women's labor force participation in India has not increased. And I'm currently a faculty at Ashoka University. So I was earlier working at Ambedkar University, Delhi, which was, again, the typical sort of trajectory amongst the Indian households for women is that you should land a government job, right? That's supposed to be a very, very sort of a prestigious kind of a job that the women are supposed to be working in. So I worked, in fact, I had a permanent position there for about 2 years. And when I decided to make a shift again to the private sector, there was quite a bit of resistance. It's not so easy for women to transition, given the kind of, perceptions we have. That private sector is more hectic. How do you balance work and home? But these considerations, for some reason, never arise for men.
Of course.
When they make such switches. So, but that's a paradox I think we all deal with as women in our lives. But that was again the second switch that I made in terms of my career trajectory. So here I would say that there, broadly, I think two ways in which society and culture across countries actually affects women's labor force participation. If you look at the world, labor force participation rate of women is lower, in the south, in the region of Asia, but specifically in the Middle East, as well as in countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. To a certain extent, it's been improving. And there, things like gender norms, what are the constraints that women face in terms of coming out to work, to the workplace within their homes, that plays a very important role. So most, and if you look at across religions, in fact, on an average, you find that Muslim women are less likely to work as compared to, say, Hindu women. And even amongst the Hindus, it's the high caste Hindu women are less likely to work than the lower caste Hindu women. So gender norms have been shown to play a very important role in the supply side factors, which inhibit or increase women's likelihood to be a part of the labor force. And that's a very well sort of an established fact in the literature. And what people are now trying to do is sort of how do you influence these gender norms? The second thing, which is also quite related to gender norms only, is the role of stereotypes. So, for instance, I can give you an example. In a country like Thailand, women, you'll frequently find women who deliver, right? They act as delivery personnel. Whereas in a country like India, you hardly see women delivering at your doorstep. So these, this is just one example of the kind of stereotype. But for example, if you look at the occupation of nurses, that's where you find more women. So the stereotyping of occupations also, I think, prevents the fluidity that men and women both should have into each other's occupations. So these two factors, I would broadly say, which are related to both society and culture, which have been shown to affect women's participation in the labor market over the last many decades in the research. So here I would say that there is a role to be played by both households as well as employers, because the average perception of an employer is also built across by seeing on an average what's happening. So this is what we refer to as statistical discrimination in economics, right? So on an average, you see that that women may be less likely to do certain kinds of jobs, or maybe they're constrained by home factors, and then you try to generalize these, that maybe all women are, because an average woman is like that, then and that's where the problem starts coming in, that even women who are professional and who want and who are serious about their careers, right? Even they get looked down upon with the kind of doubt by employers, where they feel that okay, I am not very sure, maybe the woman has skills, but maybe the household or the other responsibilities will dominate at some point of time for her. So they kind of make projections into the future. In fact, sometimes when we interview women, they also say that their interviewing experiences never. So sometimes they're not very happy with the kind of questions which are asked during the interview, and it really puts them off when they're asked questions around their marital status, if they have children. So these questions are not asked to men, right? So then why should these questions be asked to women who are professionally applying for jobs? So I think there is a need to sort of change proactively, certain kinds of ways of recruitment that employers have in India. But at the same time, I also think that households need to take women professionally. It's only when both households and employers will treat women as professionals that we'll be able to finally see a sea change. If you ask only one side to change, it's very difficult. Because of course employers have their own concerns. They're sort of working out their own calculations. How likely is she to quit? If she joins the firm today. So they're also sort of playing around with probabilities, right, in their head. So, and that's why I think there needs to be a concerted effort on the parts of both employers and households to come together and treat women as professionals. The second way out, I think, is gender sensitization. So the second question that you asked me was around harassment. Now, I think gender sensitization is extremely important, and it needs to begin in school. In India, you cannot, for that matter, in any country, you can't leave this to the, when people will start working, then we'll sensitize them about gender. It's probably too late to sensitize them about the fact that they need to respect the other gender, and they need to treat them as equals. For instance, let me give you a very small example. My daughter goes down to play, but she often faces this remark from boys when she wants to play football, that, oh, you're a girl, you can't play football, right? So I think we as households, we as parents, the schools, the teachers, all of us need to sensitize children about appropriate behavior and gender sensitive behavior, and that I think is going to play a big role in changing a few years down the line, not immediately, about how women are perceived in the Indian society, and hopefully reduce the violence against women. At the same time, I think since we are already in a space where women should be working, gender sensitization, even in workplaces, should be undertaken, which is not done seriously enough. I feel where these are just treated as boxes which need to be ticked off at times, rather than a concerted effort where both male and female employees take these trainings seriously and take this aspect of their work seriously, because it has been shown that harassment faced by anyone, even by men at workplace, if that's sexual harassment, it reduces the worker productivity. And no employer would want their worker productivity to go down if that affects their bottom line, right? So I think employers need to realize the overall value, which just being in a safe environment to work provides to workers, and which has a snowballing effect on on the overall productivity of the firm. Lastly, the question around unequal pay. Now, in India, we have regulations which sort of prohibit discrimination, but we know that none of these regulations really work. If you look at why, so in India, in terms of the numbers, on average, women earn 30% lower than men. That's what the data shows us. And if you were to look at the factors which contribute to this gender wage gap, one of the major factors is that men and women end up working in different occupations. That ends up contributing to about 50% to this gender wage gap. The other remaining, say, 10%, 15%, is then explained by within occupation differences in the kind of contracts that men and women enter into with their employers. So, for instance, women prefer more flexible contracts. Men are okay with a job that probably requires more travel, etc. So then it's the individual specific nature of the contract that comes into play even within a contract. And the remaining about 5, 10, 10 to 15% is just pure discrimination, where it could be women's lower skills to negotiate, which has been shown to affect their probability of getting a higher wage. And here I think it's a transparency in organizations in terms of what they're paying. So, there was a big scandal that came out in UK when they actually made public what they were paying to their male and female top sort of bosses. And that's when they realized, oh my God, there's a big gender wage gap, even at the top. It's not just at the bottom. So, and that's when, women at the top in those news organizations started negotiating for a higher wage. That, why are we getting paid so much less than our male counterparts? So I think transparency is going to go a very long way in reducing the unequal pay that we see in employment for women. So those are the three broad, ways I think we can tackle with each of the issues that you have raised. And I feel all the issues that you've raised are of utmost concern when it comes to gender disparities in the labor market. So, so this is something that I think even the most developed countries are dealing with, not just India, when it comes to women not being up there in the higher management positions, despite being there at the lower bottom. And some countries, for instance, have dealt with it by having quotas on corporate boards to at least allow women to have a say. So I think, of course, not everyone likes quotas, because that is like forcing something on people. But at the same time, when the society is not able to move forward on its own, or when you don't see things improving on their own, then regulations need to come in somewhere, right? So I think in terms of regulatory aspect of it, one way to deal with it may be quotas, where you have about 20, 25%, 30% quota, at least to begin with, to allow women to have more representation. In fact, this has actually worked. I'll just give you an example at the lower levels of Panchayati Raj in India. So in Panchayati Raj in India, women have had 33% reservation since 1990s. And slowly what you've seen is, because as women have gotten more and more exposed to being in positions of power as sarpanch, etc. Now, more and more women are likely to even run independently, for these elections, despite there being no quota in a village, right? So eventually, what you expect from these quotas is that once you've given exposure, once you've through quotas, you've had more women on the board. Okay, then they will take decisions. Then they will bring in more women. There will be a role model effect, etc., which will over time naturally increase the representation of women at the higher levels in the organizations. So that's one way to deal with it, but that's a regulatory aspect. Now, if you were to ask me that what can organizations do on their own in terms of trying to increase women's representation, now certain organizations I know have diversity officers, which is not just for women, but in general, trying to improve the diversity and inclusion in their organizations. So that may be, one way to deal with it, that you proactively, try to have more women, give them more space through mentorship uh, or through other channels to be able to rise up within the organization. So you just have to do it more proactively. That's all. That is one kind of initiative that employers can undertake, which is just being more proactive and providing better mentorship to their female employees who can then rise up within their organizations. And the third way, I think, to have gender inclusivity in general in the workforce, as this is related to the earlier points which I've also raised, is to break the stereotypes, give education to girls, which gives them skills rather than just giving them education to get married. You need households who value women's work and employers who value women. Everything has to come together eventually to be able to ensure that there is an increased representation of women. But of course, these are some of the initiatives I think which can make an impact, both regulatory as well as those led by the employers themselves, to be able to increase the representation of women within their organizations. So let me break this question down into two parts. The first answer is going to be more in general, what I think corporates can do to increase their engagements with education institutes. And second, what can be female specific kind of initiatives that can be taken. So on the first aspect, I think having industry collaborations, which can be project based, or which can be during the summer as summer internships or winter internships, can be very helpful for students to gauge, because what happens is that students, when they are undergraduate students, they have no clue what they want to do, actually. And it's only when they work or they do internship, that's when they figure out, okay, am I good at this? Do I really want to do this? Or is there something else which attracts me more? So I think both project-based and internship-based. And this can also be done in terms of having credits. So you can actually, for instance, at least some departments in Ashoka are trying to build up partnerships where, students are given a semester off, where they actually work with a firm. They are doing a project for which they're earning credits. So it's not that what they're doing with the firm is not a part of their coursework, because it's like on the job training that they're getting. So for instance, if you're a computer science student, you would work with HP or Microsoft or Google for about 6 months on one of their projects, design something for them, and that would be a part of your thesis, etc., which can then be given credits in your coursework itself, and that shows up on your transcript. So it's like a formal arrangement that you can have with the education institutions. So these three models, I think, are very important for students to get exposure to the different kinds of work prospects, and also for employers to understand, okay, I like this person and I would like to make an offer to this person as an employee, as a permanent employee in my firm. So I think it's a win-win situation for both, where just collaborating to begin with as interns or on a project, or on a thesis can enable better matching of both workers to the jobs and jobs to the workers. Now, when it comes to females, what we have noticed in research based on both India as well as outside India is that women tend to apply less to certain kinds of jobs, right? So certain kinds of jobs women just don't apply to, or you will not find many female applications to these jobs. And these are again very, very stereotypical jobs. Whereas when it comes to jobs in marketing, you won't find many women applying to these jobs. However, in media and journalism, you find many women who apply to these jobs. And employers know, everyone knows which are the kind of jobs in which you're getting lower number of female applicants. And I think those are the kinds of jobs where a concerted effort should be made in order to get more women on board. So for instance, there isn't we are facing, like currently, as the economics department has set up their own center, and we wanted more women on our technical team who can actually code. Now it's and we found it very hard that if you're just putting out an ad, right, we're just not getting enough female applicants. And that's when we decided to search for women more proactively. We then reached out to women who code and other places where there was a greater likelihood to find women who are working in this space and who are more, you're more likely to find a female candidate. But again, this was more proactive because we want a gender balance in our team. We don't want our team to be skewed towards a particular sex, right? So again, employers need to be more mindful. And if you are, in a kind of a stereotypical occupation is what you're selling to the students, I think what will help employers is also when they give their pre-placement talks to have one slide on gender, and on the fact that how gender inclusive they are, and also show women that there are female role models. It really helps women if there are female role models already working in this sphere. And this has been shown again in research that if you post a job ad and if you have a female boss, right, then women are more likely to apply to these jobs. So just giving a snapshot, you may not currently have many women, but even giving 3 case studies of, okay, these are the top level women in our organization, it sort of sends a message. Okay, at least this is a gender friendly firm. Maybe the inhibitions I have are not right. Let me try it out. Right. So the initial inhibition that women have that wall can be broken if if the employers, when they're posting a job ad, or if they're undertaking a free placement talk in an education institute, they more proactively build this as a part of their strategy, where they're telling the students about the fact that this is a gender inclusive space and we value both men and women at a workplace. I think just sending a signal that we only value women also doesn't really work well. So you want to send a gender neutral sort of a signal where we value every employee, including women. I personally think, based on the research that I have seen, that this can help in increasing the number of female applicants to these jobs. It was an honor to be spoken to about my research. It's again, a very it's an issue very close to my heart, because I've been working in this field. I've seen women who struggled, both in employment as well as at home. So because you've seen the struggles, you sort of know what's not going right in the society for us right now.
Yeah.
And we have, women form 50%, if they were working. And there's a large chunk of women out there. And what employers, I think, don't realize is that, it's like, I was talking to someone and they asked, why should I care about female representation in my in my organization? What is there for me to gain? And my response to that was that, you're always cribbing about lack of talent, right? And here you have, amongst, like out of 100 women who are educated, only 20 are working right now. So you have 80 women who are not working and who are actually talented and probably more skillful than the men that you have right now in your organization. So, if you could get those women who were more skilled in your organization, or even if they had the same level of skills for that matter, then you would just increase the productivity of your organization, right? So you're losing out on that one gender which forms 50% of people in India. So I think it's also sensitizing the employers about why diversity matters, because I don't think everyone realizes why diversity matters. And sometimes it's taken for granted that, a woman cannot lead, but that's not true. You have to give them a chance to be able to prove themselves. So again, these are all stereotypes, which we work with, and this wall of stereotypes needs to be broken at some level.